As technology improves, we reach ever closer to a time when starvation and depredation become things of the past. But what happens to humanity if scarcity fades, yet the desires that drive it remain? When we imagine the future, few concepts are as tantalizing or as misunderstood as the idea of post-scarcity. It's a luring vision, a world where every human need is effortlessly met, where the stress of survival gives way to limitless potential for growth, exploration, and creativity. Science fiction has painted vivid pictures of these utopian futures, with technologies that can conjure food from thin air, or provide infinite energy. Yet as enticing as the concept may be, the reality is far more complex. Achieving post-scarcity is not as simple as perfecting a piece of technology or reaching a milestone in production. It's an intricate interplay of resources, psychology, and social dynamics. In many ways, scarcity begins in the mind. What we perceive as lacking often shapes our reality more than the resources themselves. Humanity has never lived in such a time of abundance and prosperity, yet many do not feel this to be the case. Personally, or for humanity at large, scarcity then is not just about the lack of material goods, it's about perception and priorities, about what people value and what they fear losing. Even in a universe of seemingly infinite resources, the human condition ensures that scarcity, in some form, will persist. Our needs are multifaceted, stretching beyond the material to encompass things like purpose, status, and connection. Understanding this means redefining post-scarcity as more than just a technological benchmark. It's a state of being where most people can live without significant anxiety over their needs being met. As we explore this idea, we'll examine how scarcity can persist even in scenarios of abundance, and what this means for the civilizations of tomorrow. We will also look at the challenges we fear may emerge in seeking or achieving such utopias, like worries of if people will become hedonistic and let society collapse or mutate into something we would not be proud of. They say hard times make for strong people, who make for good and soft times, who make for soft people, who then let things fall apart into hard times again. And we'll consider that today too, along with asking ourselves if and when we might be post-scarcity. And as we'll see, the good news is that we might get there, and maybe very soon, that we might become a post-scarcity civilization in our own lifetimes. Though as we'll also see today, there are many levels of post-scarcity. Whenever we discuss post-scarcity civilizations, we must first address the challenge of definitions. Like most futuristic concepts, the term becomes more nuanced the deeper we delve into it. Take the term cyborg, for instance. Originally, it did not specifically refer to mechanical limbs or metal implants, but simply to a being that integrated biological and technological components, even simply medical or drug therapies. Over time, however, science fiction and public perception narrowed its meaning to conjure images of robotic arms and glowing red eyes. Meanwhile, we've developed highly advanced prosthetic limbs, yet individuals using them are seldom referred to as cyborgs, neither by themselves nor others. The concept evolved, but not always in alignment with reality. Post-scarcity is similarly complex. At its core, it refers to the idea of a civilization that has transcended the scarcity of material resources, fundamentally altering its behavior and priorities, and doing so forevermore. However, this notion quickly encounters complications. For starters, not all forms of scarcity can be eliminated. Roles like senior leadership, unique cultural prestige, or one-of-a-kind art will always be limited by their very nature, and humans generally crave things like this, rather than, say, an unlimited amount of raw material or even a staple food crop. Additionally, scarcity often depends on context. For example, during the Age of Pioneers, land was abundant, yet medicine, education, and safety were incredibly scarce. Air is rarely scarce, except in extreme environments, while water can be abundant in some areas and desperately scarce in others. Water scarcity is a great example of how scarcity and abundance can influence a civilization, and one we can probably draw a lot of reasonable inferences from for other scarcities. Nor is fixing a deficit of resources or funds always the solution. Humanity's greatest challenges are rarely solved by more resources alone. They demand creativity, empathy, and a willingness to confront the unknown, often along with carefully crafted and implemented strategies requiring constant maintenance and review. Furthermore, humans are not limited to material needs. Ideas like Maslow's hierarchy of needs remind us that humans have complex psychological, social, and self-fulfillment needs that extend well beyond the basic provision of food, water, and shelter. A traditional interpretation of post-scarcity fails to account for these more abstract but equally critical requirements. Even when contemplating ideas like Star Trek replicators, holodecks, or virtual reality, and some infinite energy source, as we will see today, that doesn't give us an easy solution for how to deal with every human need. It's also important to note that forms of post-scarcity have existed throughout human history, particularly for individuals in positions of power or privilege. Kings, emperors, and the elites often lived lives where many material needs were effectively non-scarce. And again, even peasants had no shortage of air. Yet even these elite individuals face scarcities in terms of trust, personal security, or true freedom from political or social obligations. They become another example like water scarcity, where we can draw some parallels to how future societies might work. Moreover, they often lived in real concern their abundance would go away if not constantly fought for, and with good reason. So, post-scarcity is not automatically a permanent state. Scarcity can re-emerge, whether through disaster, mismanagement, or external threats, or simply from growth. These scattered settlements of the frontier where land is abundant turn into these sprawling cities of the future, with high real estate prices. This makes the concept dynamic. Rather than an in-state, civilization simply achieves and sustains forever. For these reasons, we often redefine post-scarcity as a situation where a specific human need, or a group of needs, is met so easily and reliably that the average person no longer experiences significant anxiety about them. A truly post-scarcity civilization might be a great place to live, but to function, it needs some awesome automation. But what it might not need is conscious minds to operate, and if no consciousness is needed for such a civilization to function, would it persist? Could a world of abundance exist without anyone truly experiencing it? This question ties directly into my latest exclusive episode, Post-Consciousness Civilizations, Evolving Beyond Human Awareness. In it, we explore a chilling possibility. What if civilization itself continues long after consciousness is gone? Could automation and AI create a world where resources are limitless, but no one is left to enjoy them? Or could such places still have civilizations inside it, much as now, or perhaps very much unlike now? Nebula offers lifetime memberships and gift options, so you can share exclusive content like post-conscious civilizations with friends and family. Share your passion for Nebula with them and without needing to give personal information out. They also gain access to awesome shows like Real Science and Real Engineering, or Atlas Pros and Exploration of Exomoons. Watch the full episode, Post-Consciousness Civilizations, exclusively on Nebula, where you can see all my videos early and ad-free. Sign up now at go.nebula.tv to get Nebula for $36 a year. That's 40% off using my link. And join us in exploring the strangest futures imaginable. This definition requires some important caveats. First, we say average because a society cannot be considered post-scarcity if most of its members do not experience it. However, the existence of outliers does not necessarily disqualify a society from being post-scarcity. Scarcity may persist in specific areas, such as land, prestige, or more abstract resources, while everything else is abundant. Similarly, individuals may experience anxiety over something that reasonable people would consider secure and plentiful. That said, an advanced civilization should not only excel in physical sciences, but also be highly capable of addressing mental health issues, such as extreme anxiety, to help such individuals. We also specify significant anxiety because the goal of a post-scarcity society is not to eliminate all worries or concerns. Even in an ideal society, people in a finite universe may have legitimate concerns, such as managing finite resources over time, or regulating population growth to ensure long-term stability. However, these concerns need not induce significant anxiety. Instead, they can exist as informed, rational considerations that prompt action and planning without creating widespread distress. Second, this definition of post-scarcity excludes cases where the absence of anxiety is due to drugs, misinformation, or propaganda. what we might call a post-discontent society rather than true post-scarcity. A society cannot claim to be post-scarcity if its members are blissfully content with 12-hour labor shifts and squalid living conditions because they are brainwashed or addicted. This distinction also emphasizes the difference between subjective perception and objective reality. A person in a true post-scarcity society might still feel scarcity due to manipulation, misinformation, or personal delusions, even if their needs are objectively met. And some things are likely to remain entirely subjective anyway. Conversely, individuals whose needs are generally being met might be incited to rebellion by those seeking to gain power or prestige, resources that cannot themselves be made abundant, by deceiving others into believing the situation is dire. By refining our understanding of post-scarcity in this way, we gain a more practical framework. It reminds us that scarcity is not a binary condition but a spectrum, one that civilizations can move along depending on their resources, technologies, and societal structures. It also encourages us to study historical examples of quasi-post-scarcity groups to predict behaviors and outcomes, while acknowledging the risks of regressing into scarcity. Ultimately, post-scarcity is not an endgame. It's a fluid and fragile state that requires some vigilance to achieve and maintain. Now, we use this definition, at least in part, because you cannot have a true and total lack of scarcity in a classic finite universe, which is what we appear to live in. Today, we are looking to discuss the scenario where you might have infinite resources anyway, but we'll keep to the definition of folks not legitimately worrying about if their needs will be met, because again, some needs are not resource-based, and because our psychology and thus behavior is influenced by how satisfied and secure we are about those needs, not something more basic like if we have 1 trillion or 2 trillion liters of water on hand, or how many megatons of iron ore we are getting a year. So we have our basic definition now, and it's time to address whether infinity is really on the table and what would happen if it were. Of course, part of that discussion is keeping in mind that you cannot actually fit infinity on a table. The observable universe appears to be finite, and it seems to be running down. As the universe expands, galaxies drift beyond the cosmological horizon, becoming forever unreachable without faster-than-light travel. Every moment, entire solar systems drop beyond that horizon and are effectively gone. From our perspective, things aren't just thinning out due to Hubble expansion, they are also becoming increasingly inaccessible. Moreover, the universe is subject to entropy, and the energy we use to meet our needs generally contributes to that rise in disorder. This appears to be the nature of the universe we inhabit. As for whether the universe itself is finite or infinite, we currently have no evidence to confirm or refute either possibility. Even the Big Bang Theory does not necessarily imply a finite universe. The evidence suggests that the observable universe, the portion we can see, was once compacted into a very small region. However, that doesn't mean the entirety of the universe was once a tiny dot. It's equally plausible that the Big Bang occurred in a much larger region, potentially light years wide or even infinite, with our observable patch being just a small fragment of it. It's also possible the universe was, and remains, infinite in size. Infinity itself is a tricky concept. It can grow, in a sense, and while infinity plus infinity might still equal infinity, that doesn't mean no growth occurred. Infinity is not a number, and one infinity does not necessarily equal another. This complexity makes it essential to carefully consider what it would mean to achieve a truly infinite, post-scarcity civilization. As a simple example, an already infinite universe can keep expanding. So too, an infinite line is not as big as the area traced out by 2 infinite but perpendicular lines, and likewise for 3 forming a volume, or even more forming a hyperspace. The only evidence we have about things beyond the observable is that things in this observable universe are tangibly leaving it by Hubble expansion, that dark energy and new space is entering it to cause that expansion, and that at some point we either got an influx via the Big Bang from somewhere else, or that you can just pull something from nothing. And both of these scenarios should give us optimism about being able to beat entropy and scarcity. But optimism is not a certainty, and even access to infinite resources can have its limits. For example, we can only access a wider universe beyond our cosmological event horizon if faster-than-light FTL travel is possible. If it's not, then those infinite resources are effectively meaningless to us. Even if FTL is possible, it merely raises the speed limit, say a warp drive that maxes out 1,000 times the speed of light. it would still only expand our finite bubble of accessible resources to 1,000 times its current size, or 1,000,000,000 times the volume. Scarcity could still emerge within that larger bubble, especially as populations grow. And that's the rub. You might have a faucet connected to an infinite water supply, but if it only delivers a few gallons or 10 liters per minute, you are constrained by how many people you can support with it before scarcity arises. Even if that water is being pumped into ultra-low leakage greenhouses and recycled, there will still be a population limit when your lossage and leakage reach 10 liters per minute. That might sustain millions of people, if they live like the Fremen of Dune, but it's still finite. Even if you somehow eliminated all leakage, you'd still only be able to support population growth at a finite rate. For instance, if each person requires 100 liters of water, including the water in their body, you could only grow your population by one person every 10 minutes, or about 50,000 people a year. Ironically, this infinite water supply case could be far inferior to the entirely finite but massive water supply we have here on Earth. It illustrates how an infinite resource is only as useful as your ability to access and utilize it effectively. The same would be true of an electric socket connected to an infinite energy supply, or a wormhole connected to the center of a planet in another universe for pumping in metal, which disconnects and reconnects to another and some other planet in an infinite multiverse. The bottleneck remains. That's an important factor too, because the obvious answer to that scarcity is to add another tap, another faucet, another socket, another wormhole to deal with the rising demand. And you have to have rising demand if you plan to satisfy the need for wanting children, which is wired into us pretty strongly, if not universally, while also satisfying the desire to live longer lifespans. And if I keep adding more and more mass, such as metal from external sources, into a specific area, I'm not only increasing the total mass, but also requiring more volume to accommodate it. The way gravity works, the force it exerts in a given volume rises linearly with mass, while it falls off inversely with the square of distance. At the same time, mass increases with the cube of the distance. To avoid raising gravity to extreme levels, you'd have to continuously lower density as the structure grows larger. This is a key issue when discussing massive constructs like shell worlds, Dyson spheres, or other megastructures. Beyond the challenge of needing supermaterials to construct these immense structures, you encounter another limit tied to black holes. The radius of black holes' event horizon increases linearly with its mass. At a certain point, you can no longer pack more people or resources into a given volume because the gravitational constraints become insurmountable. Ironically, it's the immense mass of your resources that creates this limit. To grow beyond this point, you need to spread your civilization out more thinly. The maximum density of a civilization, at least at truly enormous scales, is what we call a birch planet, a megastructure built around a supermassive black hole. You can build larger, but only by going less dense. Of course, there are theoretical workarounds, such as advanced technologies that could negate gravity or manipulate spacetime to suit your needs, and there may also be other problems to replace these if we did solve them. However, this demonstrates the key point. Infinity does not necessarily permit infinite growth for a civilization. As much as I loathe all things Malthusian, the idea that there's a maximum size beyond which a civilization cannot grow does align with the known rules of the universe, and would likely hold even in most scenarios involving infinite resources. Still, history thus far shows that humanity thrives not despite challenges, but because of them. Each obstacle sparks the innovation and resilience that defines us, and things we often regard as certain barriers often crumbled before our determination and creativity. What I truly dislike about Malthusianism, however, is its tendency to treat humans as unthinking creatures doomed to fail when faced with limitations. The issue isn't whether we might one day reach a maximum size, it's the assumption that doing so will inevitably lead to catastrophic collapse and dystopia. Humanity has repeatedly shown its ability to recognize challenges and innovate solutions, and that's the part the Malthusian worldview often ignores. Your mileage may vary and you may even be right, but to me, Malthusianism and default nihilism are basically inimical to any brighter future, since the one says it inherently can't last, and the other says that it would be entirely subjective anyway, and only perpetuated by folks tricking themselves and others into believing their actions had any meaning. I am aware that there's lots of versions of nihilism these days, and started the episode off by pointing out that discussions of the future and existential topics often require nudging definitions around, hence why I say default nihilism. If you belong to a different variety of it, you need only put on that shoe if it happens to fit. Whether or not existence has any inherent purpose, it is generally helpful to act as though it does. More importantly, we tend to seek to extend our existence and improve our comfort and safety during it, regardless of whether or not life has ultimate meaning. This is important because, while we often see health and well-being represented in frameworks like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one critical element is often absent: lifespan. While it's true that someone with a shorter life may experience more fulfillment than someone who lives longer, all else being equal, a longer life typically means more opportunities to experience and enjoy life, provided that life is good or worth living, which we generally assume it is in utopia. With that in mind, it seems inevitable that extending lifespans will become a major goal for any post-scarcity civilization. As we often noted on the show, there is no scientific barrier to achieving effective biological immortality, even if we limit ourselves to strictly biological solutions. High-tech civilizations might go even further, addressing safety concerns by maintaining backups of individuals' mind states in multiple redundant systems. If harm were to befall someone, they could be restored by decanting a copy of their consciousness back into a new body. Alternatively, such civilizations might allow individuals to live entirely digital existences within highly secure and redundant computer-generated realities. I believe we are likely to see significant progress in life extension technologies in the coming decades. I certainly hope so, and we have episodes discussing the science of aging and effects of longer lifespans. However, such advancements also raise complex societal challenges. As we discussed in Methuselah's civilizations last month, a society where individuals live for 1,000 years could face issues of upward mobility for younger generations. After all, when a society's leaders are 1,000 years old, opportunities for new individuals to rise could become limited. Additionally, such a civilization might have to place strict limits on reproduction to avoid overpopulation. Yet a society where people are told they cannot have children, or must wait centuries to do so, is unlikely to feel truly utopian to a lot of people. These challenges highlight the tension between life extension and the societal dynamics in post-scarcity civilizations. Addressing them will require not just technological innovation, but also careful consideration of the values and priorities that shape such a society. It's not the only thing you might need to change, too, and this comes up a lot in discussion of utopia, how you can't populate it with regular humans and need to change us, or grow us, into something better. This is a gray area between post-scarcity and post-discontent societies. While we generally value the idea of fostering more mature and thoughtful individuals, and wouldn't consider it brainwashing to discourage selfish, cruel, or juvenile behavior, it is easy to imagine this being taken too far. At some point, such measures could potentially lead to inhuman societies or ones driven by indoctrination. The 2002 film Equilibrium, a hidden gem, explores this idea, portraying a society where people voluntarily take a drug to suppress emotions. While the film is a bit over the top, it's not hard to imagine people advocating for something similar. Even in the fictional universe of Star Trek, the Vulcans pursue a form of emotional suppression to avoid self-destruction, which can raise similar questions. Technology, of course, opens doors, some desirable, others unexpected or troubling, but we ultimately choose which doors to walk through. Virtual reality, VR, is a prime example of this, offering unique ways to address scarcity. While VR has its limitations, it can negate some forms of scarcity entirely. For instance, you could have a house made of solid gold in VR just as easily and cheaply as one made of wood. It could also mitigate other scarcities, allowing people to live any life, experience any fantasy, or even create their own private kingdoms or shared realities with others. As technology evolves, more people might choose to spend significant time in VR, or even live there entirely, whether through VR headsets or more advanced technologies like mind uploading. The rise of tools like ChatGPT, capable of producing realistic dialogue, also confirms that creating believable characters and interactions in virtual spaces is well within reach, and without necessarily needing to create genuine artificial people to achieve fulfillment of realistic fantasies. This raises intriguing possibilities, but also challenges, for how such technologies could reshape notions of scarcity and satisfaction in future societies. So that's the case for how post-scarcity may be possible. Now let's talk about how we can move toward it, the progress we've made, and the specific forms of scarcity we can address along the way. First, are we currently post-scarcity? When it comes to energy, which is one of the fundamental aspects of baseline resources, the answer is no, not quite. However, I believe we could reach that point within a generation or two. In fact, we might already be there had we not rejected nuclear power in the late 20th century. While nuclear power does have legitimate concerns at various levels, I see our rejection of it, rightly or wrongly, as one of the main reasons we aren't already post-scarcity, fossil fuels being finite and having environmental and geopolitical repercussions are not a long-term solution. Nuclear power also comes with challenges, such as waste disposal and the potential for weaponization, but its rejection set us back significantly in achieving abundant and reliable energy. Our two biggest barriers to entering even partial post-scarcity are the need for abundant, reliable energy and greater automation. At this point, I think advancements in energy storage systems, combined with solar power, could help us cross that threshold. Solar power, paired with nuclear energy as a baseload source, would greatly reduce the pressure on energy storage systems during nighttime or bad weather and provide reliable power for cities and industries. Superconductors, if successfully developed for widespread use, would further enhance efficiency and reliability. I am optimistic that we'll see these technologies coming online soon, enabling cheap and abundant power without the major downside of fossil fuels, and this could happen even before we achieve practical fusion power, which would, of course, revolutionize energy production even further. Also, given the sun puts out 2 billion times more sunlight than hits Earth, there's no shortage on available power, which can also be beamed back to Earth safely using power satellites, and may ultimately be the superior choice to anything done on the ground, as you tend to generate way more waste heat converting steam to power, or use up way more growing space with solar than you have with converting microwaves coming in from space back to electricity, which can confidently happen at 80 to 90% efficiency, day or night, bad weather or good. So again, I'm confident the power issue is coming to an end, and that really is the main issue besides general geopolitical stability preventing basic post-scarcity. We have enough existing farmland and automation to feed and house and provide generous widgets to every person alive without anyone needing to work even a 40-hour work week. And I don't think I need to work hard to convince anyone that we've got more and better automation over the horizon, both for production purposes and for AI able to help in human interaction roles like customer service, entertainment, or even automated medicine. This does not get you a paradise where robots wait on you hand and foot in your mansion, but for my part at least, I'm not interested in a world where people don't work, as I cannot imagine anything healthy about that existence for a human. I think most folks want to not need to work, and be able to have work more to their taste and timelines, which I think we'll see a general transition toward, and would say we already have when compared to, say, everyone who lived in the 18th and 19th century. Although the big difference is I think we'll see individual jobs go away in favor of most folks having several ongoing jobs or hobbies they juggle depending on need and interest. We can debate how close we are to achieving energy abundance or full automation, but I believe we are heading in the right direction. With hard work and vigilance, I'm confident we'll develop systems that help people find work that aligns with their interests, meets society's needs, and takes advantage of their skills. This would give individuals the freedom to pursue paths they genuinely enjoy, rather than feeling like they're stuck in meaningless jobs or unable to thrive. That sense of purpose reminds us that human needs go far beyond the physiological basics. Technological advancements continue to make agriculture more productive, more ecologically sound, and capable of offering new and diverse dietary options. Water remains abundant on a global scale, and desalination technology is steadily improving, allowing us to convert saltwater into freshwater for both personal and agricultural use. Air purification has also advanced, moving beyond just controlling smog. As someone who has seen significant improvements in my allergies and quality of life thanks to air filters and robotic vacuums reducing dust in my home, I think we are seeing meaningful progress in improving indoor air quality, not just outdoor pollution. While housing remains in short supply in many areas, much of this shortage stems from rising expectations, people wanting larger, more comfortable, and better equipped homes, and issues with urban management. This trend will likely be a recurring theme as we move toward post-scarcity. However, this isn't necessarily an insatiable demand for more. Often it's a case of people finally having the freedom to address needs they were previously too constrained to prioritize. In a subsistence agrarian civilization, there's little room to worry about issues like sinus problems or food allergies, but in a more advanced society, we can't afford to address them. Pursuing allergy relief or improving indoor air quality does not make us weak or lazy, it's simply a natural progression of meeting higher order needs. Similarly, the desire for clean water isn't a never-ending quest for perfection. People won't insist on 100% purity when 99.999% clean is already sufficient. It's about identifying what truly improves quality of life and working toward that. We do reach satisfaction levels. There's just a lot of things we are operating way below ideal at. This does not mean it could not go overboard, just that we shouldn't take it for granted that it is always a slippery slope to extremes. This matters because physiological needs are relatively straightforward to satisfy, but the higher levels of Maslow's hierarchy become more complex and nuanced. Let's explore these levels and consider how post-scarcity might apply to them, both in positive ways and potential pitfalls. The next level of the hierarchy is loosely defined as safety and stability. This includes things like having confidence in your access to healthcare and education, or the assurance of a reliable income or a supply of resources. You might address the latter with something like a universal basic income, UBI, or by creating such an abundance of resources that even an entry-level job requiring only 10 hours a week could provide a comfortable lifestyle. Both approaches seem plausible and could work well, or go disastrously wrong. As always, the devil is in the details, and unintended consequences can arise from even well-intentioned solutions. For instance, as we explored in our episode Is Privacy Going Extinct?, technology already exists that could, if fully implemented, drastically reduce violent crime and theft, leaving only crimes of passion. However, such systems could also veer dangerously close to creating a totalitarian police state. We discussed potential ways to achieve these benefits without sacrificing personal freedoms, but it's a challenging balance to strike. Similarly, ensuring that no one is left out or exploited in a post-scarcity civilization is no easy task. I won't claim there's a simple solution to these issues, but what I can say is this. When you have great prosperity, you gain the resources and bandwidth to tackle problems more effectively. Post-scarcity might not eliminate every challenge, but it could provide the foundation for addressing them in ways that were previously unimaginable. Moving to the higher tiers of Maslow's hierarchy, like the third level, the need for love and belongings, this becomes even more challenging. Advanced technology has made social connections easier, though often in ways that feel shallow or impersonal. Virtual reality and advanced social AI are on the horizon, and while they might help satisfy some of the needs to an extent, they are far from ideal. Needless to say, there are technologies that might address these needs in specific ways, virtual fantasies backed up with a mature version of ChatGPT, but since this is a family-friendly show, those details are also needless to say. Still, while the internet is known for its heavy presence of such content, it's not the only romance-oriented application of the internet. This includes online dating, which has become well known for leveraging data and algorithms to improve people's odds of finding an ideal partner. This is a good example of the dilemmas that post-scarcity civilizations might face. While most people are okay with private companies offering such services, many even pay good money for them, the idea of a government stepping in to manage relationships is far less appealing, even without going to the extreme of having Big Brother arranged marriages, which most of us would resent even if it were done transparently and produced scientifically proven ideal matches. It would still feel intrusive to have a government-run dating service. Imagine receiving a letter from the Bureau of Healthy Romance shortly after finalizing a divorce, suggesting 5 eligible matches in your area based on your profile, complete with a pre-arranged schedule of dates for the following month. The situation becomes even more awkward if one of those suggested matches is the person you just divorced, or someone you dated years ago and hope never to hear from again. These kinds of scenarios highlight our dilemma here. Post-scarcity can probably be thought of best by how many of these needs a civilization checks and by how much. At the moment, we're not truly post-scarcity even in those baseline needs. For one thing, we often have legitimate anxiety about death, but even most folks who are decently well-to-do by first world standards often have reasonable anxiety over food, shelter, air, or water. Some of that just comes from our modern society, as we apparently lead more stressful lives than our ancestors did, which I'm always a bit dubious about, but if true might be a byproduct, at least in part, of us being a lot more aware of things we should worry about, sometimes because commercials shouted at us. Either way, I think we can and will check those Tier 1 boxes, and probably the Tier 2 needs as well, in the next century or so, though it's likely always be a 90-some% kind of thing, not total, and vary by location. Folks on Earth in 2200 AD don't worry about air much, but the land and housing component of shelter are mighty scarce, while the folks on Mars have all the land they want, but do have to worry about their air generation and recycling systems breaking, and have significant budget items for managing that. You get new ones probably too. Our ancestors didn't have to worry about a phone bill, we do, though a different style of one from when I was a kid and we had long distance charges. I think we can take for granted that this new worry is worth it though. While a post-scarcity civilization might aim to address all higher tier needs, many will feel that some of these needs can only be addressed to a limited extent, or not at all, by a government agency. As we explore more examples in a moment, keep in mind that these are intended to stimulate thought, and some ideas might even feel more uncomfortable than the concept of a government-run dating agency. Since I encourage further discussion in the comments below, please approach these ideas as thought exercises. Just as discussing the trolley problem does not imply anyone thinks running someone over is a good idea. Exploring these scenarios is meant to spark debate, not endorse specific solutions or cause arguments. For example, our remaining Tier 3 needs, intimacy, a sense of community, and acceptance and inclusion, can often be assisted by technology. Take the internet, which enables people to find others who share even their most obscure hobbies. You no longer need to hope that someone in your small town of a few hundred people shares your passion, and even if they do, you no longer have to grit your teeth and maintain a friendship with them if their other traits annoy you. Instead, you can connect with like-minded individuals from across the planet, creating more meaningful relationships tailored to your interests. This can also result in echo chambers too, but again, technology opens doors, and that might include new problems that technology might find other ways to handle too. While technology can be a tool, it's clear that the line between helpful and intrusive can be tricky to navigate, and this is still true even if it does the job right. But that is where AI can be helpful, especially unintelligent ones that have good privacy controls on them. There's nothing really stopping someone from having an AI that creates a Facebook account to just look through everyone to find good friendship or romantic matches for that person and send them friend requests. This is theoretically what is being done on social media platforms that send you friend or connection suggestions. I imagine it can be made a lot more sophisticated and accurate with time too, and our big concerns here are not if technology can make it happen, but if we can do it without accidentally introducing a new problem or wrecking our sense of privacy. AI might face challenges as we move into addressing the fourth tier of Maslow's hierarchy, often labeled Esteem. This tier includes both self-esteem, such as confidence in your skills, abilities, and personal worth, and esteem from others, such as feeling valued and respected by your peers and society at large. It is easy to imagine AI doing wonders for people's self-esteem, a personal toady for everyone, flattering them endlessly and reinforcing positive feedback. However, even if it were built to only be honest, this still raises concerns. If AI systems are overly flattering, they could create inflated self-perceptions or undermine genuine personal growth by shielding people from constructive criticism. A world where everyone receives highly tailored, constant praise might feel comforting, but it could lead to complacency or disconnection from reality. Of course, for many people, the whole point of games, AI, and VR is to disconnect from reality, and most of us see that as perfectly fine in moderation. Our interest in games, science fiction, fantasy, or even history often stems from a desire to take a break from the present. However, we tend to feel that a total escape from reality, even if practical, would not be ideal. If life is not great, why stick with the hand you were dealt? And for most people, arguably all of us, greatness is relative. Even if everyone lived in mansions, those in the bottom half of society might still feel dissatisfied. This is a deeply wired aspect of our psychology, so it's natural to compare yourself to others or feel envious. In fact, it can even be helpful. Surrounding yourself with people who excel at something you care about often drives you to improve and puts you in touch with those best equipped to offer advice or assistance. At the same time, we have leagues, handicaps, rankings, and divisions in games and sports to allow folks to reliably compete with folks who are a challenge, rather than vastly better or worse than them. You don't send your Little League football team to play the Philadelphia Eagles. For good or ill, technology might allow us to suppress feelings like ambition or aggression if they become overwhelming. This was a popular theme in older science fiction and doesn't necessarily require complete emotional suppression. For example, you could imagine a device, a chip perhaps, that lets you temporarily dampen certain feelings or limits how intense they can get or how long they last. You'd still experience boredom, but if you were stuck in a waiting room for an hour, you could activate a boredom limiter to make it less frustrating. This could even help you focus on doing something entertaining or productive during that time. On the flip side, technology might encourage people to fulfill their desires for success and power in virtual settings. Imagine someone becoming the king of the world in a shared or private fantasy environment. Such a system could be unrestricted, or it might enforce rules, like removing you from power if you did a poor job or acted unethically. Most folks get bored playing with the cheat codes on. This kind of virtual accomplishment might still feel meaningful, at least partially because it is earned. When you beat a difficult video game, you know it's not the same as curing cancer, but it still feels like a real accomplishment. It was challenging, and that effort makes it satisfying. Just as earning a Michelin star or kicking the winning field goal at the Super Bowl doesn't cure cancer, but still represents real achievement. Whether your feeling of accomplishment is genuine or simply feels genuine is a complicated matter, and probably at least a bit subjective. We also need to acknowledge the very desired piece of technology would be one that allowed you to forget or suppress your knowledge that you're in a VR fantasy or dream, or at least while you're in there to make things feel more real. This might include preset in conditions to bring you out, or maybe not, and obviously this could be very useful, but also potentially very dystopian. As always, it's not just how you get the power, it's how you use it. If we aim to avoid building a society based on self-delusion, it becomes much easier to feel pride in accomplishments that are truly earned. This brings us to the hazier next and often final tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: self-actualization. Self-actualization is the process of realizing and fulfilling one's potential by pursuing personal growth, creativity, and meaningful goals. It represents the drive to become the best version of oneself, living authentically and striving for a purpose beyond basic survival or societal expectations. As we discussed in Methuselah's Civilizations, the search for a purpose may become increasingly challenging a few millennia down the road, as survival and daily struggles fade into distant memory. We've also explored the idea that civilizations might create virtual nurseries, where people grow up in simulated harsher times to prevent them from becoming spoiled by the ease of post-scarcity or post-biological existence. This concept could even tie into solutions for the Fermi paradox or the simulation hypothesis, suggesting that we might already be living in such a simulation. The 21st century, with its mix of real hardships and technological advancement, offers a perfect era for such a simulation, advanced enough for us to grasp the concept of a simulated reality, yet grounded enough to mostly not worry about whether such simulations are possible or if we are already in one. In this sense, our time may be the ideal nursery to simulate and raise individuals. In the very long term, civilizations navigating post-scarcity are unlikely to remain entirely stable. They will likely fluctuate in their priorities, emphasizing different post-scarcity benchmarks and deciding which challenges to address, to what degree, and by what means. Such civilizations are also likely to remain in pursuit of infinite growth, whether by seeking new improvements or tapping into new resources. There is no obvious solution to the endless chase for more, but it's a challenge that drives innovation and progress, and it's good to have challenges. That said, the near-term future looks incredibly promising. Assuming AI doesn't wipe us out, it is likely we will achieve life extension, reliable AI, and advanced automation before this century is over. I give us better than 50-50 odds of surviving AI and these challenges and making it to that time. These breakthroughs could pave the way to the stars and enable the construction of the incredible space habitats we frequently discuss on this show. I don't see most people growing bored of life within a millennium, nor do I see upward mobility constraints as a major issue in our solar system capable of supporting populations millions, if not billions of times larger than today, all living in extreme comfort. Beyond that, the pursuit of building and settling new worlds offers a fulfilling purpose. For those restless on Earth, the stars provide an outlet for ambition, and for those who stay, assisting in these efforts can be equally meaningful. This era of expansion and discovery, our Golden Age, is likely to be an extraordinary chapter in human history. Challenges may arise in the millennia to follow as space fills up, but in a post-scarcity civilization, challenges are not necessarily bad. In fact, the two resources most likely to be scarce are purpose and challenges themselves, and these will likely be how civilizations address self-actualization needs. Infinity can never truly be reached, at least not through finite steps. So there will always be new challenges, whether in finding new purposes or learning to be content without one. As for the rest of this third millennium, which we are only 2.5% into, it is likely to be incredible. It may take a few more decades or even centuries to fully realize the potential, but post-scarcity isn't a destination, it's an ongoing effort to keep improving and progressing. And that's life, a constant pursuit of growth and meaning. As we've seen today, the future is shaping up to be bright, and life in that future looks pretty good.